Welcome to Parkbench Tutors. For more information about Parkbench Tutors and the services we offer, please visit us at parkbenchtutors.com or look us up on Facebook. In this podcast, we are going to look at environmental and social responsibility and consider how that might affect a business. First of all, what's an environmental policy? Many businesses now say that they are environmental friendly or they have an environmental policy. So what do they mean by that? What they mean is that they have a policy that is related to the attitude and behavior of a business towards the natural surroundings. So, how have some businesses had an effect on the environment in the past? Let's just look at one particular business. And these you may well recognize as images of power stations. So, what are the pollutants here? Power stations have had an enormous influence on the environment in the past. What influences can you think of? Well, power stations have emitted particles causing smog. In the 1950s, this caused thousands of people to die in London because of the smog that was on the city streets. Power stations have also been responsible for producing gases that lead to acid rain, which has destroyed forests. And of course, power stations, if they are burning a fossil fuel of any sort, will be producing carbon dioxide. Now, as a business, the electricity business has had to clean up its act quite considerably, and power stations, we should say, no longer emit the number of particles that they used to, and they don't emit much in the way of acid gases, but they still do emit carbon dioxide, and that is still considered a problem as a pollutant. Here's another way in which businesses have affected the environment. It's an example of fish being killed in rivers and streams. Can you think of ways in which that might have happened? Well, one problem is that of fertilizers and the runoff from fertilizers into streams, which can cause the loss of oxygen in the streams and the fish will die. Washing detergent has a similar effect. Washing detergents have had phosphates in them, some still do, and they have a similar effect on fish. How about this one? Why should we consider this to be a threat to everyone? Many businesses run vehicles for moving goods, or perhaps just for getting their own staff from place to place, and of course those vehicles will emit carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide is said to be a factor that can lead to global warming. Now the problem here, of course, is that it's not so much an individual business, but almost everyone doing it. And we have a problem here in that when everyone is emitting a pollutant and causing damage to the environment, then no one really accepts responsibility. The air and the atmosphere isn't really anyone's responsibility. And this is something which is given a name. It's called the tragedy of the commons. What about this one? Which business or which industry might have been responsible for this damage? This is due to oil pollution from spills. How about this? Okay, it's a pile of rubbish, but who is responsible? Is it a business? Is it lots of businesses? Is it industry in general? Is it us? Are we responsible as individuals? Well, the truth is we all contribute to these piles of waste. But what can a business do? And of course, let's consider who pays for this. If you have a rubbish heap, it doesn't come cheaply. Landfills have to be treated, they have to be covered, and that all costs money. So what we encourage businesses to do now is accept social responsibility. So how can we be more responsible? Well, one way in which we can be more responsible is in fact to reduce that waste. And we have three principles for reducing waste. We reuse, we recycle, and we find alternatives to use. You are aware of this and familiar with this from your own experiences at home, and that once a week you will put out your bins, and you will probably put out another bin, either a green bin for a certain type of recycling or blue boxes for recycling. What do you recycle? Are there things that you throw in the bin that you could recycle? Consider what happens with paper. How much paper do we actually use when we're at work? How many times do we only print or copy on one side of a sheet of paper when we could use both? And what happens to the waste? How much paper is actually wasted? And what do we think of waste? What sort of attitudes have we got to waste? This example shows that you can make money from recycling. You can recycle paper, you can recycle plastics. And that's perhaps one of the main things that we need to do, and that's altering the way we think in terms of business, and altering the way we look at the cost to the environment and the cost to business. So here's where it starts to become interesting for accountants. Waste can be a raw material for another man's business. One man's waste may well end up as being another man's fortune. Increasingly, we try and make businesses look to the future, and we try and think about the future, and we make use of a term called sustainability. Now, the definition of sustainability that I prefer is one that actually came from the United Nations several years ago, and it says that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In other words, if we keep using up things now, we keep using resources now and they can't be replaced, then that isn't sustainable, and future generations are going to have considerable problems. A nice simple example, of course, is the way in which we think about cardboard. Cardboard at one time was simply thrown out and put in a bin, or it was just burned. That didn't consider the way in which we were cutting down trees to make cardboard. If you take how long it takes a tree to grow, and then considered the rate at which we were using up trees to produce cardboard, it became pretty obvious that in fact we were using up the forests faster than they could grow again. So in fact we were destroying the forests. By recycling, then we can avoid the waste. We recycle and we reuse. Fossil fuels still provide most of our energy, but we can in fact reduce energy costs, and businesses have made large steps to do this, often by taking very simple measures. So for example, we use energy for heating and for lighting, but if we replace the incandescent bulbs with energy efficient fluorescent bulbs, then we use only about a third of the actual energy. And of course we can also use thermostats to control heating systems and to control the room temperature, and then this particularly applies to offices. Okay, here are two more images. What have these got to do you think with sustainability or energy saving or anything like that? You've probably used Skype or something similar, or Skype you may prefer to call it. It's used by businesses as well. It's an easy form of video conferencing, and it reduces the travel costs, and at the same time it saves time. If you can communicate with your colleagues overseas, then you don't have to pay the travel cost of going overseas, and of course you don't have to waste the time on the aircraft of flying there and back. Other businesses are environmentally, or considered to be environmentally friendly, because they encourage carpooling, right? And we say that that's encouraging social responsibility. You can see an example here. This helps save time, and it also helps to lower pollution. Now what about this? This is even better, right? This is the most environmentally friendly that you can get, I suppose, just cycling to work. But of course not everyone can cycle to work. How about this? This is a major problem. Plastic bottles. So, what should a socially responsible business get rid of? Well, every time you go into an office or into a conference room or to a meeting and you see loads and loads of water bottles all made of plastic, then basically this is one of the things that businesses should be looking at. This is not being socially responsible. Sometimes being socially responsible isn't the main question that we ask. Sometimes it's what's the best use of something. So for example, aluminium is used for soda cans, and is this good or bad? What else could you use aluminium for, and would it be a better use? For example, aluminium is used to make aircraft parts. Now if you have got a shortage of a resource, which do you think might be better, soda cans or aircraft? We've referred to the paper waste. So how can we reduce paper usage? We talked about printing on both sides, but there are even better ideas. And one of the things that we are starting to use more and more now is electronic documents. We store things on electronic documents as electronic documents in files instead of storing lots and lots of hard copy, and we send messages electronically rather than using the post and wasting paper and envelopes. And of course, when you transport a pile of mail, there are the transport costs of the vans, etc., the fuel that's used for delivery. So electronic documents, they're faster and they don't pollute in the same way. And finally, if we waste resources, and this is where the accountant is interested again, then we're not being responsible. So a wastage of resources is a waste of money. So if you just have a dripping tap, that costs a business money. It is in fact an unwanted expense. And of course that means that if you've got unwanted expenses, they will reduce profits. In addition, we are also wasting a natural resource. Water is a natural resource. That ends our short session, brought to you by Parkbench Tutors. Thank you for watching and for listening. We wish you success in your studies. For more information, please visit parkbenchtutors.com or look us up on Facebook.